When a video game series becomes successful, and by that I mean profitable, it is inevitably decided that the characters and settings be put into other forms of media in the pursuit of more profits, whether it be other games, books, comics, anime, and of course movies, and Devil May Cry is no exception. With the critical success of the first and third game, Devil May Cry cemented itself as a franchise with lasting appeal, being one of Capcom's most profitable. And it's because of this that the series started to cross over more and more into other games and even other media. Early on, Hideki Kamiya, the director of DMC-1, slipped Dante and Trish into the PS2 versions of Beautiful Joe, while DMC-2 Dante was fitted into Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne as a guest character. But the amount of Dante-related crossovers definitely increased after DMC-3. Dante and Trish were added to the cast of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, with Virgil joining in the updated Ultimate Edition. The DMC cast was also included in crossover games like SVC Card Fighters DS and Project Cross Zone. Supposedly, Dante was even planned to be included in Soul Calibur 3, but didn't make the final cut. Devil May Cry's adaptation outside of video games has been more troubled though. DMC-1 got a short comic book series based around the events of the first game, but went unfinished when the comic book studio making it went bankrupt, while DMC-3 had a 3-part manga series that is set a year prior to it, but the series ended before the third book could be completed due to the artist quitting the project. A Devil May Cry film has even been in the works for multiple years, with the film rights being bought by Screen Gems, the studio that made the Resident Evil films, though considering how long it's been in production hell, this will likely, and hopefully, never be made. Now, I could talk about any of these pieces of media in order to analyze Devil May Cry's cross-media penetration, but today I will be specifically talking about the anime adaptation of the series, simply called Devil May Cry the Animated Series. Welcome to the anime special of my Devil May Cry series retrospective.
Let's rock, baby.
With DMC3's success, Capcom decided it needed to expand the franchise and chose to commission an anime of the series in order to do this, and went to Studio Madhouse to produce it. For those uninitiated, Madhouse is a major Japanese animation studio that can be thanked for series like Hajime no Ippo, Beck Mongolian Chop Squad, Monster, Death Note, Trigun, One Punch Man, and the guilty pleasure that is High School of the Dead. So the anime was in capable hands. After being teased at a couple anime fairs in early 2007, Devil May Cry the Animated Series began airing June 14, 2007 on WoW TV in Japan for 12 episodes, before being licensed by Funimation for localization in North America. So with all this history stuff out of the way, how is the anime itself? Honestly, making an anime for Devil May Cry makes a lot of sense, as its over-the-top action and characters should transition into the medium fairly well, as it's already full of series like that, except the execution is where it falls apart. Now, the anime does start off fairly well. Being set after the first game, the plot of the anime is effectively about Dante's regular life as a pizza-loving, strawberry sundae-eating, half-demon bounty hunter, and all the odd jobs he's contracted to do. We begin with Dante being given a job by his agent Morrison to protect a young orphan girl, Patty Lowell, as she is being targeted since being named the inheritor of the Lowell family fortune. On the way to the Lowell estate for her to claim her inheritance, the two bond while Dante fights off demons who are attempting to kill Patty, including the insidious but weak Sid. Upon reaching the estate, however, it's revealed that Patty was simply being used as bait by the real Patty Lowell so that she could get to the estate trouble-free. To atone for her transgression of putting a small child in danger, the older Patty Lowell offers to adopt the young orphan. Even though she now has a home, Patty still decides to spend her days at the Devil May Cry shop, pestering Dante, who would rather be left alone, which becomes their recurring dynamic throughout the rest of the series. Following the pilot, every episode after is a different job that Dante is working on and a different demon for him to hunt. These range from being hired by an overprotective father to kill a potential demon that might run off with his daughter, assisting Lady in hunting down a speed demon that's terrorizing the freeways, and being asked by a ghost to help her falsely accused brother out of prison. For majority of the series, it's just about these smaller stories that Dante becomes involved in, with nothing really changing episode to episode. The actual plot doesn't rear its head until about the last third of the series, where we see the minor demon Sid, who hadn't appeared since episode 1, collecting pieces of demons that Dante has eliminated. In the end, it's revealed that he's gathering seals that are keeping a powerful demon at bay. Seals which were coincidentally made by Patty's alchemist father, and her mother is holding onto the last seal in the form of a pendant, something she asked Dante to protect. Wanting to see her mother again, Patty rushes to bring the pendant to her mother when she asks for it back, though Sid intervenes, allowing for him to break the seal and attain the power of the great demon. Abigail. Huh. Okay, this is a minor nitpick, but seriously, Abigail is the name of your major demon. Abigail. I'm sure this might be a biblical reference or something, but in the pantheon of demon names like Belphegor or Dagon, the best name the writers could think of was something that sounds like it's lifted from an episode of Murder, She Wrote. Anyway, when Dante confronts this powered-up Sid, he is left crucified, while Sid goes on to terrorize the human world with his new power. All appears lost until Patty goes to wake Dante from his nap, who then goes down to face Sid, again being impaled, only to not be fazed by it and quickly finishing him, making you question how he had any problems to begin with. And the series ends off with the status quo returned, the crew of the Devil May Cry racing off to complete another mission. When you look at it as a whole, the structure of the DMC anime is actually extremely similar to another series, Cowboy Bebop. Both series are episodic, every episode being a self-contained story except for an underlying subplot that doesn't become the focal point until the final couple episodes, ending with a climactic showdown. Most characters that are met episode to episode by Dante represent him in some way, shape, or form, or whose story ties to something that's going on in Dante's personal life, which is also frequently the case for the cast of Cowboy Bebop. And in the end, for how aloof he acts, Dante always does the kinder thing for those he helps, usually involving not taking the payment for the job he was hired for, even if he ends up further in debt. Very similar to how things end up for Spike and the crew of the Bebop. But this comparison shows the two biggest flaws about the Devil May Cry anime. Firstly, there's not enough characterization for any of the characters. For how much Bebop spends with its wacky antics in space, it takes the time to focus on the characters and their relationships, giving insight into their pasts and how that's affected them in the present. This makes the characters of Spike, Jet, Faye, and Ed feel all the more real. This isn't the case with Devil May Cry, however. If you're a fan of the series, the Dante in the anime is basically a more subdued version of his video game counterpart, so you'll already have a decent sense of the character already, along with Lady and Trish, who also appear at times. If you're watching as someone who's never played the games though, Dante and the others aren't really explored in any sort of way for you to understand them well, with more time being spent on the anime exclusive side characters. We do get the occasional glimpse into Dante's more lonesome lifestyle, and it is admittedly fun to spend time with him as a character, but he isn't enough to hold up the series himself. This problem could be resolved by having another character to act as a counterbalance, someone that helps to flesh out Dante by contrasting him, but there isn't such a character. Nope, not at all. Okay, they tried to do this with Patty, but I personally find her more annoying than endearing, as she spends majority of her screen time whining and complaining. Patty also isn't in a majority of the episodes, only appearing during the scenes at the Devil May Cry, so that limits a lot of the scenes that her and Dante can share. The brother-sister dynamic between the two works at times, but I feel that's more due to the strength of Dante's character than Patty's, especially since Ruben Langdon, Dante's video game voice actor, returns for the role, which helps to sell his character.
Hey there. You're not actually into lame operas like this now, are you?
Dante!
The second issue with DMC's structure is that there's no actual threat or antagonist for Dante or the rest of the Devil May Cry group. In Cowboy Bebop, the Vicious is a great antagonist for Spike, as he represents his troubled past and challenges him throughout the series, acting as a looming danger. There's also weekly villains that will appear that present tangible threats to Spike, Jet, and Faye, like the assassin Mad Pirouette, who almost kills the protagonist of the series more than once in a single episode, all while having his own tragic past. It's these opponents that add stakes and drama to each episode, making you want to see what will happen to the hero. With DMC, there is a Devil of the Week every episode that Dante has to fight, but most are wiped out by the Demon Hunter within a matter of seconds, and no actual challenge is ever presented. Dante being this overpowered demon killing machine can be fun to watch in a cathartic way at first, but it becomes boring by the end, as he never has to struggle to achieve victory, which in the end is what we like to see in our entertainment. We want to see our protagonists fight for what they want, and the more they have to endure, the more fulfilling it is to see the outcome. To use the Dragon Ball Z series as another example, Battle of the Gods is probably one of the best films in the franchise, as Goku, a character known for being incredibly powerful, is pushed to his absolute limits, having to tap into powers he didn't know he could. This struggle makes it easy to become invested in, as you want to see if and how Goku might succeed in his fight with the God of Destruction Beerus. With DMC though, Dante never has any real challenge, with the final battle being the first real threat. One could say this was to demonstrate how formidable of an opponent Abigail Cid was compared to previous enemies, but in the end he goes down as easily as all the rest, making it all pretty anticlimactic. Now, for how much I've torn apart the story and structure, the anime does have a couple standout episodes. Rocker Queen I personally really enjoy, as it fits most into the Devil May Cry mythos, being about a girl who gave up her humanity in order to gain fame for her music, and the rock tracks that are used for this episode specifically really sells the episode. I also think Death Poker is a fun episode, being that it's all about a deathly poker game, which has enough intrigue and suspense to keep me invested throughout. Generally though, the anime doesn't seem to know what it wants to be, either an action romp similar to the games, or focus on the interpersonal relationships that Dante has, both things that it doesn't do exceedingly well. But there is something that could save it. So, mostly I've talked about the story of Devil May Cry, but since this is an anime, and a DMC one at that, we have to look at the production quality. And at first glance, the anime looks pretty good. Dante and the other characters are consistently on model, and when it needs to be flashy, it can be flashy, with action poses that would make a JoJo proud. The art style is also pretty consistent with the series, with all the designs looking pretty fantastic, though the minor demons are on the bland side. The cinematography is impressive and avoids scenes from being just flat shot, reverse shot scenes. If you can tell I'm getting ready for a but or however, you'd be right, because however, in terms of animation, this anime is pretty weak. Yes, still frames look sharp, all characters look on model majority of the time, even during action, and the use of lighting is used to great effect, but there is a lack of animation in characters' movements, especially during action sequences. You might be deceived by the camera shaking and moving around during scenes, or the background cycling through like an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon, but when you look at the scenes closely, you'll notice how there isn't a lot of motion and animation in them. These are pretty standard animation techniques, but it's surprising how often they're used in DMC. This type of animation can work in something like Death Note, which is much more grounded and story-focused, but Devil May Cry is a series that sells itself on its outrageous action, so the lack of any dynamic animation is disappointing. Now, while this can make dialogue scenes boring to watch, it could be made up for with really well done action sequences, as that is what you're likely watching a Devil May Cry anime for. But these too are lackluster. When Dante is confronting a new demon to fight, usually near the end of the episode, the music kicks in and attempts to build it up as if there'll be a bombastic fight scene, as Dante draws his sword or pistols, but as soon as it's about to get good, there's a cutaway. The fights between Dante and demons are often obscured or edited around, which is likely done to avoid having to do any complex animation, and you're just left with the conclusion, Dante emerging the victor unscathed. Cutting away from the animation can be an effective tool to build tension, as you're left to wonder what the outcome was, making the reveal that the hero has won that much more gratifying, or defeated that much more shocking, but it's used too often in DMC for it to work, especially since Dante is never in danger of losing. But even when we do see the fights, the action sequences are often uninventive and uninteresting. For the most part, Dante doesn't really move around or use the environment, and the editing is so quick, you never have a good sense for where Dante is in relation to his opponent and everything else. There also isn't any real fight choreography, so every fight scene is Dante simply slashing or stabbing with his rebellion once or twice, and then firing his pistols until whatever demon he's fighting is dead. It would honestly help if Dante was allowed to use some of his other devil arms, as a powerful Beowulf straight or Nevin guitar solo would add a lot more variation to the action sequences and how they play out, but that isn't the case. It's this reason that the best fight scenes are the ones between Lady and Trish in episode 4, where there's a variety of weapons and tactics used, the environment is incorporated, and the scenes last for more than a couple seconds. Again, it's disappointing how boring the action of the anime is, as something like Devil May Cry should have a lot more energy and impact to its fight animation. Something in the vein of One Punch Man or Samurai Champloo. It kinda makes you question what the director was going for when they were making the series. Who was the director of this series anyway? Shin Itagaki? Wait, the guy who directed the new Berserk anime? Huh. That actually makes a lot of sense, and not even saying anything about overall quality. Super Eye Patch Wolf did a video in regards to Berserk 2016's direction, and I highly recommend checking out that video, but to summarize, when you look over Itagaki's resume and look at the things he's been more involved in, like the sports comedy series TQ, he seems to be more skilled and have more of a passion for anime that have a lot of vibrant colors, very energetic animation, and a lightning fast pace to it. These series are more lighthearted and comedic, with 2-minute episode runtimes, so in doing something with a darker tone and more human-like designs like Devil May Cry, Itagaki doesn't seem to have the style or flair or whatever is needed to bring something like this series to life.
The hell with this.
In hindsight though, it actually isn't that surprising that DMC didn't work that well as an anime, not only due to its own execution, but also how video games don't typically make for good anime. This is a larger discussion for another day, but video games transitioning well into anime and other media is actually few and far between. I've noticed the ones that work best are light novels, which have novel in the title, or RPGs that have a very heavy story focus, while more action-heavy or gameplay-focused games don't do so well. This difficulty is because video games are an interactive media, and transitioning into a non-interactive media like anime isn't as easy as just retelling the same story with the same characters. The pacing of game stories have to be balanced between gameplay sections and story sections, while allowing for the player to go at their own speed, which is drastically different from the pacing found in something serialized like anime, which has to attempt to have a 3-act structure every episode and every season. This is why at the end of the day, I can't be too mad at Madhouse and Capcom, because I think Devil May Cry works best as a video game, and forcing it to be anything else is bound to be a lesser product. They can throw in all the over-the-top action scenes and goofy Dante moments into it, but it just won't be the same as doing those stylish combos yourself.
And jackpot.
So this is what happens when a developer tries to reach out into other media, but what about when a game franchise has to expand within the game industry itself? Well, we'll get to that next time.